Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Pull Up a Sandbag with Joe. Hi, my name's Joe O'Connor, founder and CEO of the Transformer Company, and I help veterans, veteran business owners and those who support veterans become even bigger, better and bolder versions of themselves. And I do this in three key areas: health, wealth and mindset. So, another edition of Pull Up a Sandbag with Joe, and we move on first to the week that was. As you know, this is broken down into three sections. The week that was, which reports on what's happened in the previous week, building up to this edition. So I look and give my take on the news and what I think of the news. You may disagree or agree, and of course I always welcome feedback, because feedback is the food of champions. Then we move on to Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, which is probably, my favourite slot, because I get the honour, privilege and excitement of speaking with people who I feel are giants in their field expertise or area of knowledge. And we have a mix. We have a majority which are ex-forces themselves, and we look at how they transition from military life to civilian life. And then we have some people who are expert in their fields and have been a civilian all their lives. The thing is that they support veterans regularly. And then I finish with the final section, which is my take on I'm giving you a top tip on either health, wealth or mindset. And I tend to move it around, switch it about and give a different take and pick one particular subject per episode. So, right, first of all, we move on to the week that was. So the week that was, what's happened? Well, actually, because it was the Jubilee weekend, last weekend, I'm going to look at some news over 2 weeks, really. If we start earlier in June, right, the news was that 50% of landlords are moving out of the buy-to-let market. That this is pretty much because the government have changed the way that buy-to-let landlords are being taxed, with capital gains tax being more punitive. It's got to be paid up front. Now, I get it that if you're not in the buy-to-let market, this may not affect you. I do know that a lot of veterans, though, people who are coming out of the military, are being talked into, persuaded into to get into the HMO market or become a landlord, which is okay, so long as you recognise that there's stuff happening in the market which is different. Section 24 is looking at the way that capital gains tax is treated, and should it be in a limited company name or a sole proprietor, i.e. a self-employed individual, right? So there's lots of things, and because of that, what's happening is a lot of landlords are moving out, selling up their residential properties and moving into commercial, which is a whole different thing. So if they're doing that, you may want to think twice before moving into the buy-to-let market, because it's got its own unusual traits about it. Also, what's happened is oil went up to $120 per barrel. I mean, it went to $140 at one point, and it increased over the weekend. Now, the bank holiday weekend in particular, and it's been increasing since then as well. Now, when you think that petrol is over about £1.80 per gallon, per litre, and diesel is even more expensive, and the haulage firms are making a bit of a complaint, and to be honest, I can appreciate why. I was listening to one owner of a haulage firm, and they was telling the interviewer that it's costing, for an articulated lorry, it's costing an extra £20,000 per annum for the average haulier to operate one articulated lorry. So that's quite a stark reminder of how the fuel prices affect all of us, because guess what? If that's increasing, then retailers who need to get their products to them are going to have a bigger increase by the hauliers to get the products to them, which means the knock-on effect is that our prices in the shops are going to be more expensive. So watch this space. I'll keep you up to date with what's happening on a weekly basis. Elon Musk. Well, unless you've had your head buried in the sand, you will probably know that Elon Musk put a bid in for Twitter, and actually it was hostile. It was a hostile bid, and with Elon Musk's short attention span and Tesla price dropping because of various incidents of the self-driving mode, and the chances are that he may need to recall a number of cars, and it's also looking at laying off staff because he announced that on Twitter. So the thing is, will Twitter hold him to the deal to buy Twitter, because now it seems like he wants to get out of the contract by stating that the figures that Twitter, the users that Twitter have quoted, aren't correct. So do you think Twitter are going to hold him to that, or just charge him a penalty and let him go? The jury's out on that, and I'm not sure yet. Moving on to the subject of Big Brother is watching you. Oh, well, that was mentioned some years ago when they were talking about bringing in the ID card. Now, you'll be pleasantly or unpleasantly surprised to know that the ID card, which was muted by the government some years ago, would have been issued to everyone in the UK, and it enabled us to have blood groups and various biometrics on the card. And there was a lot of furore. It raised a lot of concerns. The thing is, when you go shopping at one of the big supermarkets and you get a loyalty card, they know a lot about you. They've got your address, your phone number, where you, what your full name is. They even got your buying habits, so then they can start marketing to you. Right, so another example of Big Brother's watching you is use of Apple Pay. If you use Apple Pay, Apple can monitor your purchase behaviour, and that drives a lot of revenue for them, because data is king, because what they can do is market to you, just the same as supermarkets do. And they'll know your buying patterns, how much you spend, when you spend it, what times of the month you spend it, which then can determine, even though they may not know your payday officially, they can pretty much determine when it is because of your spending habits. So be careful. So be careful with who you share your information to. And if you're with Apple Pay, then they know more about you than you probably think they do. Coming on to something else that was of interest to me, the Labour Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves was giving a cost of living debate in the Houses of Parliament, and the Tories never attended. And guess what the reason was for that? Well, they were more concerned with Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, who was fighting for his political life, and to come to support of him, rather than find out something that was really important, the cost of living debate, which was at 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon. Now you can make your own conclusion on that. Surely, though, the cost of living debate should have been listened to. Talking about cost of living, right? The pound is falling in value, and it is falling by quite a bit. Now that's good for companies who are exporting, but companies that are importing, though, it's not so good, which means it'll have a knock-on effect to the prices in our stores. Now, I'm telling you this not because I want to be the doom and gloom merchant. It's so you can at least prepare yourself and look at how you can change your spending behaviour if you have the capacity to do so. For instance, only 10% of some fruit tomato, say for instance, is grown in this country. At the minute, we're importing an awful lot from abroad, which could mean that the price of fruit increases. Some good news, right? What they found is the coronavirus jab, can be used to train the body to attack and defeat pancreatic cancer. So that's amazing. And I love to give you good news, and I think that is really good news. Something on the not so good side, which brought a great deal of sadness to myself, is that 2 Brits who were formerly in the military in the UK moved over to Ukraine some years ago and have been serving with the Ukrainian army for quite a few years, and they're with their partners, married to Ukrainian ladies. Now, they got caught by the Russians or the Russian contingent and have been sentenced to death for treason, and a Moroccan also was captured by them. Now, on the positive side, I think that this could be a ploy, and I can only pray that it is. It's a ploy to have a hostage swap. So, wait and see on that, because I do hope that that's the case, and they are safe and sound and return to either the UK or at least to somewhere safer in Ukraine. Oil data by Refinitiv. That's something that I found particularly interesting, because obviously a barrel of oil, when you see it, I've mentioned that it was $120. It may even be more now since I've recorded this podcast, or it may be less. The fact is though, Refinitiv is the data analyst and provides all the statistics on how much it costs to refine oil. Because even though the barrel of oil is given at so many dollars, the fact is that once you get the barrel of oil, you then have to refine it so it can be used in a petrol-driven engine or a diesel-driven engine. To refine it, it used to be £7.40 for a unit to be refined. It's gone up to £35.40 to refine it for petrol, and from £5.50 to £41 for diesel. So if you're wondering why the difference between petrol and diesel, because I was wondering why, I thought that it was just tax, VAT. It's not. It's because the jump from refining it for use in diesel engines has cost more. It's a bigger increase than it was for petrol, although both of them are massive increases. And another thing to put into the equation is the demand for oil is higher than production, which means that scarcity means the price will increase. On top of that, you have tax. Now, the tax is a big chunk, and that's why the government are being pressed to think about giving another reduction in the tax that they charge on fuel. There's also, by the RAC and the AA, they're lobbying fuel stations to pass on that 5% tax that has already been given back or reduced. So that's a big thing at the minute, and the cost of living is a big topic. So what I'd like to do on the week that was is say that yes, there has been some news that's challenging, and it shows that there are going to be challenges in the future. The good news is though that I think that if we pull together, for some this is going to be a real tough time. For others it may be slightly easier. The fact is that I've seen it before in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s and the early noughties, right? And we will get through this together eventually. It's just that it's going to be quite tough for the time being, and just stick with it. I'm going to keep you informed of what goes on in the future. And coming up next, we'll be looking at standing on the shoulder of giants. Thank you. Hello and welcome to another edition of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. And you know, what I've discovered is during these series is that there's amazing information out there with veterans who have served and transitioned successfully, veterans who are still in the military, and of course those who support veterans. And today, because I think that my conversations with my next guest is regular, and we often talk about our different takes on mindset therapy and the financial aspects of life and also health. And I'm really pleased to welcome Winston Wagstaff here again, who's really involved with Transformation for Veterans, the charity that helps injured veterans and their families. What we wanted to talk about today was the types of therapy that you've come across and the way different therapists look at things. And there are two main ones, aren't there? If you just sort of give the title of it for our listeners.
That's difficult.
Well, there's evaluation analysis,
yes,
and non-evaluation analysis, isn't there? So just explain the evaluation analysis for me.
It's a technique that is a basic discipline in our association, or was a basic discipline in our association. But I always felt that it wasn't fully necessary, in that if you can get people and you have the character, the individual has the character to get them talking and get them in conversation, then it wasn't really necessary. But some people have difficulty in holding conversations, and so it was a method of getting them to give information.
So that's interesting. So you're saying that it wasn't necessarily the subject or patient or the member. It was some therapists have difficulty communicating. In a flowing style, so they had to use a checklist.
And getting the client to communicate, because without information, you need information to provide therapy, because you have to analyse not what necessarily the client thinks is his problems, but what are truly his problems.
Yeah.
And that we tend to hide, disguise, or whatever, cover up a lot of the deep feelings. And it was a method of getting the client to sometimes release, without them knowing, some of the deep problems that they had.
So that's interesting, because I know your favouritism. You favour non-evaluation analysis. So let's have a look at the evaluation analysis. Basically, that's where a therapist will go through a series of questions that must be adhered to in a particular order, in a particular way. You just read them out and then write down the answers, and that's very analytical at its rarest form, and that you cannot move on to the next question until you've answered the first one. Which means that sometimes, even though it's very good for someone to follow a tick box exercise, it means, of course, that the meeting can't flow and come to a. And I think there's a lot of that goes on in life nowadays, aren't there? I mean, I know from my experience with years ago, compliance officers in financial services, and by the way, compliance is important because you're dealing with people's money, so it's extremely important. I know years back though, compliance officers were very, very much tick box, whereas now they've recognised that the non-evaluation analysis, which we're going to come on to now, is much more effective, because what it allows the advisors to do, the financial advisor who's having a compliance visit, is to open up and actually explain what difficulties they're having, what prevented them from doing that, and then the compliance officer say, okay, so the feedback sandwich, what you did well, what you didn't do so well, and what you can do better next time. So tell me about, because I know you're chomping at the bits to talk about non-evaluation therapy, and then we're going to go on to some other stuff about negative and positive thoughts and how you can overcome that. So which will naturally follow on from this. So the non-evaluation therapy, then tell me a little bit more about that, please, Winston.
Basically, if you can gain the client's attention and confidence, then you can talk around any subject really that the person wants to talk around, or feels that he's having problems with, or wants to give you information about, and they will indicate the deeper problems by what we call little pregnant pauses.
Right, okay.
If they feel uncomfortable about discussing that item, that's where the list came in handy, excuse me, in that they had to cover most subject areas.
Yeah.
Although I may say in 20 years of doing that system, I never got to the end of the list. Never got to the Zs and XYZs. But even so, it is a useful system for a lot of people, but I found it sometimes a bit of a handicap, and rather had the free-flowing discussions.
Having said that, though, you may not have got to the Z part of the questions. You still had great sessions with the client because you were able to go off-piste
absolutely
with your non-evaluation technique.
Yes, it's intuitive in many respects, but you flow where you feel that you're going to get better prospects of getting to the real problems.
Right, okay.
Because I must say, very rarely do the clients know their true problems. They may, they may be very aware of their current problems, but more often than not, the real problem probably lies further back and as a different source. Freud used to go back to childhood. Well, you can sort problems out, impressions that you gained when you were a child, but not necessarily. In the case of the veterans, they're nearly always experiences, in the face of military situations. But often the weakness, and we're all human, we all have weaknesses. The weakness is there from a different period. From an experience, much further back in our lives. Childhood, yes. I've often found that the impressionable period is in our lives are often where the deepest emotions lie, certainly in the teenage years.
Certainly, and that's very interesting what you're saying. Of course, during my training, I mean, the formative years are important. I totally get what you're saying about in the teenage years. My appreciation from what I've gathered as well, and I know we've had many chats about this, is in the formative years, i.e. 0 to 7, that's when things can be embedded. And then, of course, you've
foundations.
got the foundations, which will, by the way, affect directly how you start to manage your life from 7 to 14 to 21 to 28 to 35 and beyond, because it is. I mean, I've come across people when discussing with them and discovered that at the age of 4 they were told they were stupid.
Yes.
You stupid boy or you stupid girl. And then that's just carried through and affected the teenage years.
Coloured the whole life.
Can
colour the whole life.
Yeah. So I'm interested because I believe in non-evaluation analysis, although I suppose to a degree you're always in the analysing during the session. It's just that it's much more free-flowing and open as the client wants to discuss things. Yeah. So how have you used this and been most effective with one client that comes to mind, for instance?
A particular client comes to mind. that brought me problems. It wasn't a military situation, but a lot of current life problems that she existed. And when it came really down to it, it was a rape problem.
Right, okay.
But that wasn't what she came to me to discuss. No. But that was the root cause of all the emotions that set into being how she reacted to situations.
Right, okay.
And it was right back to that tremendously life-affecting experience that she had. That, again, you have to say, has coloured the whole of her life up to then. What I had to accept was that we could move on from there.
Yeah.
We could resolve that problem in her emotional background, resolve it, and she could make a new start, and build on. And in actual fact, use that experience in a valuable way. It could colour in a positive way the rest of her life, rather than withdraw. So you look at the negatives that could have existed in your life, and you can use them in a positive way.
Yeah, and of course, rape and the way that it affects people is big, a big deal. It's always been a big deal. It's particularly been brought forward now with the cases that go on. So if you've been affected by any incident of rape, then it's extremely important that you seek professional help and do not remain in isolation with it ruminating, i.e. going around in your mind, because it's important that you can share the experience with someone who is qualified and is caring enough to help you through that. Isn't that be right?
Any deeply emotional situation needs the correct approach, but yes, they can be resolved. Can be resolved.
Good. Well, that's really helpful. Thank you. So what I've got from this part of the of our chat is that evaluation analysis tends to be very structured, fixed, goes through an analysis.
Some therapists even put numbers to it.
Yeah.
They evaluate different experiences, different questions with numbers, and then add up at the end and say, you are a very stressed person because you've scored 137.
Yeah.
I'm not in that school, I'm afraid. You can say, yes, you've had some bad experiences, but you can overcome them.
Yeah.
Don't get overwhelmed by a score.
No, because that's right, because you go through the questionnaire and it asks you, how stressed are you, what's the stress from 0 to 10, and then how often do you get stressed, when do you smile, 0 to 10, and then by the end of it, if you've got a score of 350, wow, you're stressed. Right, okay, I've got that. Excellent. And then the other one is the non-evaluation analysis, which, by the way, I prefer that, although I do integrate both of them. And I prefer on the evaluation is whenever I'm conducting a financial review, I use that because I need that, because I need the figures. On an emotional basis, though, free-flowing non-evaluation is much better because it allows the conversation to just flow, like ours now, for instance.
Yeah, yes. You can respond to ideas that you hit upon, in that moment, and use them. Some people would call it inspiration.
Yeah.
Well, inspiration can be a very handy tool to have sometimes. The sad thing is that we're not always able to formally come across it.
So when that's interesting, because we've already touched on there's two types of therapeutic approaches from the therapists themselves. So what would you say someone should look for in a therapist? Because obviously you've got the letters after the names or the certificates, but that doesn't always say how good the therapist is. Well, it represents what sort of training paths they've gone through. What would you recommend you look for in a therapist if you needed, or a counsellor?
I think somebody who, in a very positive way, can sit in the client's seat and place themselves in that situation. How would I have reacted? How would my emotions have been disturbed or damaged or whatever by that situation? How could I have recovered? So empathy. I think empathy is the word. But put yourself in the client's situation and try wherever possible, to move along on those lines. It's a human reaction.
Yeah.
We all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. Let's try and gain the strengths and let's try and overcome the weaknesses. But we all have them, and we all experience them.
Yeah. So effectively, what you're saying there then is when and if you're looking for a therapist, you should be looking for someone that you can feel comfortable with, that they have empathy for your situation, and that they have got good experience and some good case studies that they can give you to show the successes they've had, which is absolutely fabulous. Thank you. So now what I'd like to do is to move on to the attributes or processes, approaches for the negative and positive stimulus of the mind, and how you can use different techniques. Because with the negative, we talk about a feeling of helplessness and feeling of hopelessness. And then on a positivity, it's where you're feeling hopeful and helpful. So just explain on the negative how you've seen that manifest itself in people and how you've used this strategy to help them.
It's where the analysis comes in. You can see a problem having a certain effect. Accept that. Accept the reality of the client. Accept the reality, whatever you may question it, but accept it. And move them from that negative aspect of it. Try and encourage them forward and finding a positive aspect to it. From hopelessness to hopefulness. There is hope. You can move forward. There are, methods and with encouragement and with outlining those methods of moving you away from that negative into a positive. Maybe slow, maybe quick. I've experienced both situations where people have had, amazing recognition of where they were and changed overnight.
Yeah.
But that's not for everybody, and it doesn't occur to everybody. It would be perhaps very nice if it did, but it doesn't. But as long as we're making progress, as long as you encourage people along a path of progress, then you're moving them in the right direction. They're not in the wrong direction. They can only move away from that negative into positive, slow as it may be, but you're going the right direction. And it will build. Positivity brings positivity.
Yeah.
Whereas negativity, it will always, decline the situation. People don't remain the same. People think they remain the same. They don't. You're either a negative or positive, and we should try wherever possible to people to encourage them into positivity, into looking forward and growing, in a meaningful way.
Yeah. And that's interesting, how we talk about every little bit counts to make a big difference, because it's the difference that makes the difference. And I think that there's nothing more demonstrates this than the laughter lines or lack of laughter lines in someone's faces.
Yeah.
Because what you're talking about there isn't like a week of happiness or a week of sadness. That is a whole lifetime of happiness or a whole lifetime of sadness. Hey, and that's not to say in a 60-year-old, 70-year-old, 80-year-old, 90-year-old person's life time that it's all going to be happy. No, that's not what we're saying. What is clear to me, though, is that when your lifetime is the majority happy, then it shows in your face.
That will show. Showing your character, showing what you do, showing your approach to other people.
Yeah.
We affect the people around us.
Mm.
And if you're a positive person, you'll have a positive effect around you.
Yeah.
And it's a responsibility.
And I always say to my sons, first of all, and then to my clients and people I come across, that you are effectively what your closest 5 friends are.
Yeah.
That's from an earning potential, a look on life. Because when you, like when I was in the military, we'd sit around at the end of the day, whether it be around, I'll sit on and pull up a sandbag, which is what this is about, and you'd have a chat, what went well, what didn't go so well, and you could see he was feeling negative. The thing is that we'd jump on it straight away and say, right, come here, mate, put your arm around the shoulder, come here, let's have a chat. And then you find out what's happening. And I think that in this world of technological advances now that we're living in, there'll be people going on the internet playing various games on the PlayStation, which might be something that's killing people, or it's negativity, and then you've got people chatting away, and it's all bombarding you. I'm not prescribing to the fact that you shouldn't play games, because games are great. The fact is, though, be very careful what you get dragged into, because when you hear enough negativity, then that's the only thing that life seems to be, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We're so aware, because of communications now, of all the problems around in the world.
Yeah.
But we also should be aware of all the positives. But they don't seem to get the format for passing on positives so often as the negatives.
No, exactly. And we haven't got any journalists lining up to take statements from us outside the studio, have we?
No.
Saying, "Oh, that was brilliant. You both seem so happy. Tell us what it is." No, the thing is, though, if something happened that wasn't very good, then there'd be journalist media outside.
That makes news, but it's sad that positives don't make as much news.
No.
But the positive should be a reward in itself.
That's right. So the negative is about a feeling of helplessness or hopelessness, and the feeling of positive, is about feeling hopeful and helpful. So what would you say would be a great way, just little and often changes, what would you think would be a great way to get someone who's feeling negative, and maybe is generally in the past has not always been negative, but is just going through a tough time, or perhaps someone whose life does border on being negative all the time? What would you suggest a little exercise could be, without going into a full process, but just some of the things that they could use to start feeling hopeful and helpful for themselves?
Well, I think if they can look into the life where they are, how they've developed, and recognise the positives, that they've got where they are.
Yeah.
And what they've achieved, the family, the friends, and recognise it in a positive way. They've made achievements, they've got progress. And, in the world in general, we're making progress.
Yeah.
But yes, there are some disasters, there are some areas of danger, but I think in general, yes, we have moved forward, we have achieved great things, we are, in wonderful way placing people, on the other planets. What an achievement, how ridiculous that would seem to somebody back a few generations ago, to say that yes, we have we have planted men on the moon. We have sent spaceships now around Mars and Jupiter, and absolutely fantastic achievements. So yes, we're moving forward. Yes, we have problems. We have some dangers, but we have a wonderful lot of achievements as well.
And I know that you might be listening and thinking, oh, nothing happens. It's positive in my life. Well, then here's one for you. The fact that you woke up today, whatever time of day it is, whether it's morning, evening, night time, in the middle of the night, you're alive. You're listening to this, and guess what? You've got a multiple number of organs in your body that are sending oxygen around your body, sending blood around your body, working all of your mind, working all of your limbs, and just being able to help you stay alive. And the fact is, that's amazing in itself, isn't it?
Absolutely. There was the old saying of count your blessings.
Yeah.
But we tend not to look upon very ordinary things as blessings, but they are blessings, and promote them.
Yeah.
But again, always try and find a positive aspect to whatever the situation is, and not in a prissy way, but in an actual, measuring way, and say, yeah, we're moving forward, and we can move forward even more, by taking that positive attitude.
Yeah.
From negatives to just neutral, and from neutral to positive.
Yeah.
And go, and you will benefit.
Yeah. And something as simple as reading 1, 2, 3, 10 pages of a good book per day.
Absolutely.
Can do stuff, listening to an inspirational, motivational, educational CD or MP3, depending. CDs going back a bit. Not as far as cassettes though, because we remember cassettes, don't we? So just about listening to an audio track that's positive, and then perhaps just smiling. In fact, not perhaps, definitely smile at people. If you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours. It doesn't matter whether you've got a mouthful of pristine white teeth or you've got no teeth. A smile is brilliant, right? Isn't it?
It's a positive.
Yeah.
You've moved on. You've passed a benefit.
Yeah.
Not only to you, you'll benefit by the smile.
Yeah.
Actually, if they could measure in your brain, you will have had some release of chemicals which are positive. But you've passed that positive on to someone else. Somebody else has felt the benefit of that little push forwards.
And then once you've mastered how to smile at someone, then you can even say hello or good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And because I know when, and you've probably done the same, Winston. I remember when I was doing my practitioner's course, the basic level to start with. Although I don't suppose there's any basic level, but the practitioner's course. Yeah. And we were encouraged to go out onto the underground in London and start a conversation. And I had a bit of an advantage because I'm a northerner. I say, it's okay. I normally speak to people on trains because I'm from the north. I was joking, of course, but I just struck up something with them straight away, and they just, because when people talk to you, sometimes you think there's an ulterior motive, don't you? And really, it's just about being friendly.
But just about being friendly and about being human.
Yeah.
We're all brackets human, and we need to communicate. It's a basic requirement in our life is to communicate, and if it's a positive communication, then everybody has benefited.
That's right. That's fabulous. So what I've got from today is that there are two real types of therapy, and by the way, you may prefer one over the other. The first one is the evaluation therapy, or the evaluation analysis, where the therapist goes through a particular number of questions in a particular style and wants the questions answered. And they can also take you through a test which will show how stressed you are by answering various questions, and then you mark them 1 to 10.
Mark them up,
Yeah. Or there's the non-evaluation analysis, which is much more conversational, flowing, and what happens is that it just goes with whatever the flow is for the client and for you, the listener. And it's also when there's a pause on something in particular, you often used to make a mental note of that and then come back to it at some stage, whether it be in that particular meeting or at a later stage, to find out what that pause was all about.
Whenever the opportunity arose, but certainly take note of where there was some anxiety or some inhibition, because those are often the areas that need investigating, need developing. And that's where, yes, you may feel a little apprehensive, a little reserved about discussing those, but those issues are really the ones that you need to discuss and fully develop.
Yeah, and that's where a good therapist will recognise that and how to help you the most. Then we just went on, and what else I got from our great conversation today was that we went through how to get from negative to neutral to positive so negative feeling hopeless and helpless through to neutral being neither one or the other, and then to positive where you feel hopeful and helpful.
And start to be helpful.
Yeah. Well, listen, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today, Winston.
Pleasure.
And we'll chat again. And listen, I trust you've enjoyed the Standing on the Shoulder of Giants session today, and we will have another one next week where we will be covering something different for you to take some feedback and some great information about to help you get even better results in your life and business. So thank you so much. And what a fabulous session that was on Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. So what I'd like to do now is the third section of the podcast, which is the health, wealth, mindset section. And as you know, I pick an alternate one for each week. And this one today is all about health. And what I'd like to do is talk about something that we covered with Winston Wagstaff in a previous podcast, which was vitamin N. Vitamin N, you remember? Well, I'll tell you more about that when we actually flick across. But you'll notice that today I'm sporting the Corps of Royal Engineers rugby union jersey when I go to see the Army-Navy game at Twickenham. So, without further ado, I'm going to switch over to the rather different podcast on health to introduce you to vitamin N. And to take you there, I'm just going to finish and then you'll be there in a second. Hello and welcome to this edition of my health podcast. Hi, my name's Joe O'Connor, founder and CEO of the Transformer Company, and I help veterans, veteran business owners and those who support veterans become bigger and better, bolder versions of themselves. And I do this in three key areas: health, wealth and mindset. And as I've said, today I'm bringing you the wealth edition, and I thought I'd come to the deepest rural part of Cheshire for this absolutely idyllic setting. And I'd like to share with you how I feel the importance of nature is, and it's my take on vitamin N, which is a really important vitamin in my opinion to have, and certainly factors up there with the rest of the vitamins. Vitamin N, so what does that stand for? Well, vitamin N, I had a good chat with my friend Winston Wagstaff, who has featured in my podcast on Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, Pull Up a Sandbag with Joe. And we talked about vitamin N in some detail, and vitamin N stands for vitamin nature. So today what I'd like to do is share with you the benefits of relaxation and how you can relax really, really easily. And what I'd first of all like you to do is get yourself in a position where you're sitting or lying comfortably. And we're going to go through a process today which can help you relax. And I recognise that what's going on in the world at this minute in time is quite stressful, uncertain, and can be quite frightening for you. So I want to help you relax with this technique, which by the end of it you will have had the benefit of. Even though a short period, scientists have proven that this can be as good as a good night's sleep. So get yourself sitting or lying comfortably and close your eyes, or you may wish to just focus on this idyllic, picturesque view of a lake with a stream going to a lower lake. And as you begin to breathe deeply, breathe in and out, and in and out, and you can listen to the water flowing and listen to the birds singing. And I'd like you to count from 1 up to 10 in your own time, continuing to breathe in and out, and you feel more and more relaxed, and the room seems to fade away as you're just focusing on this idyllic, relaxing sound and the scenery. And as the room fades away, you become more relaxed, and all the tension in your body, which may be in the centre, starts to just dissipate out through your legs, out through your toes, down your arms, out through your fingers, and even up through your head and out the top of your head, so you're feeling really, really relaxed. And it's as the tension disappears, you feel very quieter still, and this feeling gets deeper and deeper. Relaxed. Continue to relax, and as you continue to relax now, your tension is going out through your extremities and has now completely gone. Your muscles and nerves want only to rest. You are totally relaxed now. Now picture yourself walking quietly down a path alongside this lake with the flowing river. And it sounds like a river. And as it flows, you go to the quiet lake, listening to the birds singing and nature, the quietness. It's early morning, the air is cool and the sun is warm on your back. The grass is covered with dew and the smell of flowers is all around. The lake is still, clear and deep. You sit down slowly in the grass at the edge of the lake, and a gentle breeze rustles the grass softly. You look up at the blue sky and watch the white clouds floating by. You feel the warm sun. As you breathe in, your body fills with clean, fresh air. It fills with clean, fresh air, and you are extremely relaxed. And as you go deeper, deeper relaxed and sleep, just float away and listen to the relaxing sound of the water flowing into the still lake and the birds singing happily. And as you relax and feeling that relaxation and all of your tensions have gone away and left you, you can slowly start to wake up and realise the wonderful relaxation you've experienced. And as you count from 10 back up to 1, you will start to wake and become more and more alert. 10, 9, 8, and 7, 6, 5, waking up now, 4, 3, 2, 1. And as you're fully awake now, you have experienced the full benefits of vitamin nature and the relaxation technique. You can do as many times per day, per week, per month as you wish. And remember, of course, that one session for 20 minutes, which this is as good as 4, 6, 8 hours sleep. And because it just relaxes you, releases the tension, and is my gift to you. With what's going on in the world at the minute, you need to be able to relax and just remove yourself from it. Just taking 20 minutes, and as you're listening to those birds singing, I want you to remember, whatever goes on in the world, whatever tensions you face, or trials that you experience, remember, you are brilliant and you are a wonderful person. So my gift to you is just to stay happy, keep smiling, and I'll see you again sometime soon. Thank you and have a brilliant day. And welcome back. So what a fabulous health section for today, because I wanted to give you a little bit of a gift to help you through and relax whenever you need to help you through the tough stuff that we've been experiencing for the last few years now. And whenever you're having a bit of a tough time and you feel tense, stressed, maybe anxious about stuff, just listen to that and just take 20 minutes out of your day, which isn't a lot when you think about it. It can make such a big difference. So remember, of course, my vision for you is to help you in the areas of health, wealth, mindset, and I do this by the Pathfinder Success System, or getting your free copy of the downloadable book, or Think You Can, Know You Can, or indeed attend the Transformer Business Network, and even go beyond that to the mastermind and beyond. Until we meet the next time at the Pull Up a Sandbag with Joe, I wish you all the best in the future, and remember to have a brilliant day. Thank you.